Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Fighting games are like pizza. Even where they're bad, they're still kind of fun. Unless they give you food poisoning, or in this case, thumb cramps. But let's be real, the Super Nintendo had some bangers when it came to fighting games. Some of these were arcade-perfect ports, some of them were ambitious experiments, and some of them were just, well, let's just say they were quite interesting. Today we're stepping into the pixelated ring to talk about 7 fighting games that were blessed, or cursed, the SNES or the Famicom, because some of these were never released outside Japan. Some you know, some you might have missed, and some will make you question what life choices led you to play them. So grab your fight sticks, charge up those supers and let's jump in. And if you want to hear more of me, Retro Wars is a weekly podcast where we talk about the old games we used to play back when we were kids, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts from. Alright, let's get into it, shall we? 7 fighting games you may or may not have heard of. Alright, let's start with a big one. Street Fighter Alpha 2. The fact they managed to cram this masterpiece onto the SNES is nothing short of witchcraft. Imagine trying to fit a whole 5-course meal into a lunchbox. Well, that's what Capcom did here. The original arcade version was butterly smooth, fluid, and had that signature Street Fighter polish. The SNES version, well, it's like the game was trying really hard to be that cool older cousin, but showed up just a little late and forgot half their outfit. Sure, the animations take a hit, the loading times are bloody brutal, and sometimes it feels like the game is buffering in real life. But considering the SNES wasn't exactly built for Alpha 2's mechanics, this is an impressive feat. Plus, it still plays well, that's what matters. Just don't expect an arcade perfection and you'll have a good time. One of the most notable sacrifices is the sound. If you're used to the arcade's version crisp audio, you'll notice some creative reinterpretations of the music and voice clips. It's like someone recorded the arcade sound through a tin can and then compressed it onto a floppy disk. Remember them floppy disks? But hey, at least it's still recognisable. And let's not forget the control limitations. The SNES controller had 6 buttons, which is perfect for Street Fighter. Well, kinda. If you're playing with a standard controller, your fingers are going to get a workout trying to keep up with the combos that were meant for a much more powerful machine. But let's be honest, if you did grow up with the SNES fighters, you probably have the thumb muscles that could crush a walnut anyway, so you're completely fine. The character roster remains mostly intact, and that's a blessing. You still get iconic fighters like Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, and some of the Alpha exclusives like Rose and the almighty Sakura. That said, playing these characters on a system that struggles with smooth frame rates can still feel like you're fighting in slow motion. It's like watching your favourite action scene but someone keeps pausing the VHS, and I love the good old VHSs. Some of you kids aren't going to understand what a VHS is. At the end of the day, Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the SNES is an impressive feat, even if it is the definition of just doing the best with what you've got. If you've never played it, you should at least give it a shot just to appreciate how much Capcom squeezed into this tiny little cartridge. But if you have access to literally any other version, just go play that instead. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Tournament Fighters is what happens when you take Mutant Ninja action and slap a competitive fighter on it. And you know what? It works. Just not the Mega Drive version. My god, don't go near that. This is actually one of the most polished SNES fighters out there. Tight controls, a surprisingly deep fighting system, and an art style that screams 90s morning cartoon perfection. You've got the main turtles, of course, but then they've got characters you may not have realised, like Armageddon, War, Asuka, and some of you are going to realise, who the hell are these? Well, I read the comics, so I know exactly who they are. Either way, they're awesome, and this game deserves way more love. One of the standout features here is the super move system. Unlike some other SNES fighters that kept things simple, Tournament Fighters introduced special meter-based attacks that would completely turn the tide of a fight. It adds an extra layer of strategy, and let's be real, watching Leonardo unleash a devastating super move is just plain satisfying. Graphically, this game looks great. The sprites are big, colourful, and is full of personality, and the backgrounds are packed with detail. Whether you're fighting in a sewer or on a rooftop, everything that oozes that classic TMNT charm. Let's take a moment to also appreciate the soundtrack, again, unlike the Mega Drive version. The music in this game is an absolute bop. Seriously, it's got some of the best tracks on any SNES fighter. If you don't believe me, go listen to some of those stage themes and tell me you don't feel like kicking butt immediately. The controls are also surprisingly tight for a licensed game, and it's clear Konami wasn't just trying to cash in on the TMNT brand, and they actually put effort into making this a legitimate fighter. Combos feel responsive, movement is fluid, and the game rewards skill. This isn't just a good licensed fighter, it's a great fighting game period. Overall, TMNT Tournament Fighter is one of the best licensed fighting games on this SNES, and a must play for any fan of the genre. Whether you're here for the turtles, the gameplay, or just pure nostalgia, it's a shell-kicking good time. If you did sleep on this one back in the day, it's time to wake up and give it the love it deserves. I played it a lot on the TMNT recent collection, and it's an absolute blast for my Nintendo Switch. Clay Fighter. Now, if Street Fighter is a well-trained martial artist, then Clay Fighter is like that one guy in your neighborhood who thinks he can fight just because he watches wrestling. But you know what? It's entertaining as hell. The game asked, well, what if we took serious fighting games and replaced everyone with claymation weirdos? And somehow it works. The first thing you'll notice is the art style. Instead of the traditional pixel art, everything looks like it was made out of Play-Doh and then animated frame by frame. It gives the game a unique, almost unsettling look, but at the same time, it's part of the charm. Fighters like Bad Mr. Frosty, Blue Suede Goo, and Taffy aren't just visually weird, they play weird too. And speaking of the gameplay, it's not actually bad, alright? The controls are responsive, the combos exist, but let's be real, no one's playing Clay Fighter of a high level competition, like it's not going to appear at EVO. This is a game where a snowman fights an Elvis impersonator, and that's all you really need to know, it's just about having a laugh. One of the coolest things about Clay Fighter is its personality. Every attack, every animation, and every taunt is packed with humour. The game doesn't take itself seriously, and that's what makes it fun. The voice actor alone deserves an award for being the most over-the-top voice in fighting game history, although saying that Street Fighter Alpha 3's one can never go away with you. The music is another thing that stands out. It's catchy, quirky, and fits the game's goofy tone perfectly. It's the kind of soundtrack that makes you want to pop your head while throwing ridiculous punches at your opponents. That said, as I said, the game ain't perfect, the hit detection can be wonky, and some of the fighters feel unbalanced. But let's be honest, that's just part of the experience. If you're playing Clay Fighter, you're here for a good time, not a fair fight. It's a game that was just pure fun. It's not the cheapest fighter on this SNES, but it's easily one of the most unique. If you want a game that doesn't take itself too seriously and will make you laugh while you button bash, this one's for you. Now, this is how you make a mecha fighting game. Gundam Wing Endless Duel is that kind of game that makes you feel like a total badass the moment you press start. If you've ever wanted to pilot a giant robot and throw hands or beam sabers, this game is a dream come true. First off, the animation is absolutely top tier. The sprites are massive, the movements are fluid, and the attacks have real impact. The game just doesn't look good for a SNES fighter, it looked good, period. Every Gundam in the roster has a distinct feel, and the attention to detail is insane. The combat is fast, smooth, and surprisingly technical. This isn't just some clunky robot brawler, the game actually plays like a legit high-speed anime fighter. You've got dashes, air combos, projectiles, it's almost like a precursor to the Guilty Gear games. And let's talk about those super moves. They're not just flashy, they're devastating, and landing one of these makes you feel like you obliterated your opponent straight out of the anime battle. The sound effects, the screen flashes, explosions, it's just pure Gundam. The roster is packed with iconic mobile suits from Gundam Wing, and each one plays uniquely. Whether you want to play as Wing Zero, Epion, or the long-range Death Scythe, there's a mech style for everyone. Wing Zero for me, Wing Zero for me. The music is also good here. Every track absolutely slaps, and it perfectly captures the intensity of giant robots fighting to the death. Seriously, if you need motivation for anything in life, just put the Endless Duel soundtrack on. The only downside, well, it never got an official release outside Japan, which is a crime. But thanks to emulation, you can finally experience what might be the best Gundam fighting game ever made, although saying that, there's Battle Assault 2. If you love Gundam, anime fighters, or just ridiculously fun fighting games, do yourself a favour and play this one. It's an absolute gem that deserves way more recognition. Super Chinese Fighter. Okay, so this is one of those games that never came out and was only released on the Famicom. So imagine a world where traditional kung fu movies met chibi anime characters that got turned into fighting games. That's basically Super Chinese Fighter. The game is part of the Super Chinese series, which is mostly known for its RPG and action games, but for some reason they decided, meh, let's give it a go and make a fighting game. And you know what? It's kind of awesome. The visuals are super bright and colourful, with cute, exaggerated character designs that make you feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. But don't let the cuteness fool you, this game packs some serious punches, with flashy special moves and high energy combat. Super Chinese Fighter stands out because it mixes traditional martial art moves with always the over-the-top, almost supernatural attacks. You've got fireballs, energy waves, and aerial techniques that make the fights feel dynamic and exciting, and it's just not about mashing buttons. Timing and strategy actually matters here. Another cool feature is the single player mode, which feels more like that RPG than a typical fighting game. You level up, learn new techniques, and progress through different opponents in a way that gives the game way more depth than your average fighter. It's almost like a mix of Street Fighter and an adventure game. The character roster is surprisingly varied, featuring a mix of karate masters, mystical warriors, and even a few weirdos, because we always need wee weirdos. The movesets are different enough to make each character feel unique, but not so complex that you need a PhD in frame data to play like most fighting games are now. Some of the best things about the game is the smooth, responsive controls. A lot of the lesser known SAN fighters suffer from stiff or delayed inputs, but Super Chinese Fighter feels surprisingly polished. It's quick, fluid, and honestly still really fun. The music's decent as well, with some good SNES tunes that feel upbeat and match the fast-paced battles perfectly. The sound effects might be a little goofy, but that's part of the charm. If you love fighting games with a unique twist, Super Chinese Fighters is worth checking out. It may not be one of the most well-known Super Nintendo fighters, but it's easily one of the most fun and underrated. World Heroes. Okay, imagine you had a time machine and decided to gather up some of history's greatest warriors, throw them in a ring and make them fight. That's basically World Heroes. It's like Mortal Kombat meets a history book, if the history book was written by someone who really didn't care about historical accuracy. Oh, so it's Assassin's Creed Shadows. First off, the character roster is pure chaos. You've got a knockoff Bruce Lee, a cybernetic Yahtzee, a football player, and even Rasputin throwing down in the arena. The game doesn't care about realism, it just cares about making history ridiculous. Gameplay wise, World Heroes is a little more methodical than other SNES fighters. It's got a slightly slower pace, an emphasis on strategic movement and counterattacks. It's not just about mashing buttons, you actually have to think about your next move. Now, one of the most unique things about World Heroes is the deathmatch mode. Instead of a normal fight, you battle in an arena with hazards like electrified walls, spikes, or even landmines. It's like someone looked at a fighting game and went, yep, what if we just made this more dangerous? The special moves in this game are the highlight. Every character has their own ridiculous set of attacks, from fire-breathing monks to wrestling-style suplexes. It's part fighting game, part over-the-top action movie, and it works surprisingly well. The graphics are pretty decent, with big, detailed sprites and flashy effects. The animations might not be as smooth as something like Street Fighter, but it gets the job done. Plus, the backgrounds are full of personality, with stages that match each fighter's origin story. The sound design is, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the voices and effects are just hilariously bad, but others just add to the game's charm. This isn't a game that takes itself seriously, and that's exactly why it's so fun. If you're looking for a fighting game that's pure nonsense in the best way possible, World Heroes is definitely worth a try. It's not the most polished fighter on the SNES, but it's easily one of the most entertaining. And finally, Super VG. Alright, let's just get this out the way. Super VG, or Variable Geo, is a fighting game where the entire roster is made up of anime girls. And I'm going to just say, I saw the box art and went, holy shit! I don't know if that would be allowed now, and I'm not showing it here because I don't want YouTube coming after me. But don't let it fool you, the game isn't just about fan service or boobs, it's actually a really solid fighter. Super VG plays a lot like Street Fighter, with smooth animations, tight controls, and a surprising amount of depth. The combat feels fast and responsive, and there's a decent amount of strategy involved in learning each character's strengths and weaknesses. The character designs are pure 90s anime goodness. You've got martial artists, schoolgirls, ninjas, and even a waitress who can throw down with the best of them. Each fighter has their own unique moveset, making for some really interesting matchups. The special moves in this game are flashy and satisfying to pull off. If you love big fireballs, spinning kicks, and dramatic finishes, this game delivers. The super moves in particular are ridiculously fun to land. One thing that stands out about Super VG is its story mode. Unlike most fighting games that just throw into random battles, this one actually has a plot. Sure, it's a little goofy, but it adds some personality to the game and gives you a reason to keep playing. Amongst other reasons. I know what you're doing. Visually, the game looks great. The characters are well animated, the backgrounds are detailed, and everything has that classic SNES era anime aesthetic. It's a game that's easy on the eyes in more ways than one. The soundtrack is another highlight. It's packed with high energy tracks that fit the fast paced action perfectly. It might be not iconic as some SNES fighting game soundtracks, but it's definitely solid. Now, Super VG may not be as famous as Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, but it's just an underrated gem that deserves way more attention. If you're into anime fighters or just looking for some fun, fast-paced brawlers, this one is definitely worth checking out. And there you have it, 7 wild, weird and wonderful fighting games on the SNES. Whether you're into classics, hidden gems or just total chaos, this list has something for everyone. So what's your favourite SNES fighter? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more retro gaming goodness. I'll see everyone again in 2 days for another list. My name's been Danny, take care of yourself, Bye bye.